Here's the thing. I don't like making things any more complicated than they need to be, but when it comes to personal finances, there can be a lot to wrap your head around. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of conflicting advice, and a lot of scams. I've seen far too many people express interest in learning about their personal finances, but when they get into it and it starts to get a little bit complicated, they decide to just bury their head in the sand and they continue to fall behind. So, this is my guide to personal finances for lazy people. If you only ever watch this video and you never learn anything else about your money, you'll still be better off than you were before. The first thing we have to understand is our end goal. Why are you even bothering to learn anything about your money in the first place? For most people, the end goal of the entire process is fairly simple: to have enough. Now, that can be a pretty loaded idea, but this is not the video where we get into the psychological and philosophical aspects of enough, although that is coming in another video. So for now, let's simplify it. You have to have enough in two separate categories: now and later. Let's start with now, since that's where we are. We want to set up our lives so that we have enough money flowing in to cover our lifestyle and our various expenses without being stressed about running out. This means our expenses have to consistently be lower than our income. If you don't know how much your expenses are, that's a problem. Now, you could sort through every individual transaction you've had over the last 6 months, categorizing every expense into a detailed spreadsheet, but I'm lazy and that's way too much work for now. Most banks will either give you a cash flow summary, or you can just generate a statement and look at the total amounts in the debit and credit columns. Debit is how much you've spent. If that statement is over the last 3 months, for example, just divide that total by 3 and boom, you've got your average monthly expenses. The money that you spend on your lifestyle every month is money that you use to stay afloat, but the money that's left over is money that you can use to get ahead and to get wealthy. Quite simply, we want as much money as possible in the get ahead category rather than just the stay afloat category. We've got exactly 2 options to achieve that: spend less or make more. When it comes to spending less, it's good to be aware of the small expenses that add up, things like ordering a coffee, going out to bars, buying small luxuries. But for most people, the biggest portion of their money goes to 3 things: housing, transportation, and food, in that order. Reducing these things first is going to save you a lot more money than just cutting out a daily coffee. For housing, cost reduction could look like moving to a smaller, cheaper home, or perhaps getting roommates to share the burden of the housing costs. It might feel great to live in a nice, big house all by yourself, but consider how much less stress you'd be putting on yourself if you lived in something like a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment instead. For transportation, you might consider things like using public transportation more often, carpooling when possible, selling your car in favor of a cheaper one, or even walking or cycling to work and shops if you live close enough. It's very easy to spend a lot of money on food, so be aware of your habits when it comes to things like takeaway, going to restaurants, or ordering delivery. At the grocery store, I almost always opt for the cheapest brand of any product, and I try to avoid buying expensive things like alcohol or meat too often. There's a limit to how much you can decrease your spending, however, so at a certain point, it's probably going to be better to focus on earning more. Is there something you can do to upskill yourself? Or perhaps you need to move to a different company to earn more. Everyone's solution here is going to be different, so this will need to be an entirely separate discussion. However, it is good to start thinking about what things you can do to increase your income. So, how much do you actually need to save? Again, this is going to be different for everyone's situation, but as a general rule of thumb, if you can manage to consistently save 20% of your income, you're doing far better than the average person. If that seems daunting, start with something small, even if it's just 1%, and build up from there. You don't have to be perfect straight away, as long as you're making some progress. So now we're consistently saving some money, which means we've got enough money for now. But what do we even do with the savings, and how do we use it to get ahead? I'm glad you asked. There are 4 steps I need you to follow. That's it. The good news is, a lot of people will even be able to skip 1 or 2 of those steps. Steps 1 and 3 are going to be about debt, so we have to understand a tiny bit about the different kinds of debt that we might be in. Broadly speaking, we can classify debt as either good debt or bad debt. Good debt is relatively low interest debt that helps us to make more money, such as a mortgage on a property that we either live in or rent out. Bad debt is high interest debt that isn't tied to an asset that makes us money. Things like credit card loans, car loans, or personal loans. As you might have guessed, we want to get rid of bad debt. You can look at things like debt consolidation, but this is the lazy person's guide to personal finance, so let's just get to step 1. Pay off your credit card debt if you have any. Keep making minimum repayments on any other debt that you may have, but use any and all extra money that you're saving to pay down your credit cards as quickly as you possibly can. The interest rate is way too high, so get rid of it. When you've paid off all of your credit cards, or if you didn't have anything to pay off to begin with, it's time to move to step 2, saving up a 3-month emergency fund. At this stage, you should be consistently saving money every month, but sometimes unexpected emergencies pop up. Perhaps some maintenance issue with your house, or perhaps your car broke down and needs expensive repairs to keep running. If we have a special fund to cover these sorts of emergencies, then we won't need to go back into debt just to stay afloat, and it's not going to derail us financially. For most people, this fund needs to be around 3 months worth of expenses. Step 3 is to tackle the remainder of the bad debts that you might have. Car loans, personal loans, or anything with an interest rate above roughly 5%, except for mortgages. Make minimum repayments on everything except the loan with the highest interest rates, and just focus on ruthlessly eliminating this debt. Once that's gone, move on to the loan with the next highest interest rate, all the way down until all of your bad debt has been paid off. Step 4 is what's going to take the longest, but it's what's actually going to make you wealthy, and it's what's going to make sure that you have enough for later. Step 4 is all about investing your savings. Now, I know that investing can sound really daunting and complicated for a lot of people, so just start with the simplest, most hands-off investment you can possibly get: index funds. Index funds are funds that you can buy on the stock market, and they basically give you a tiny bit of a few hundred different companies all at once. The most daunting and time-consuming thing about investing in the stock market is usually making sure that you're investing in the right companies, and that you're not putting all of your money into something that's going to be worth nothing in a few years. You could spend thousands and thousands of hours researching every company on the stock market and hope that you get it right. But we're lazy, so we're just not going to choose, and instead we're going to take a small piece of everything. This diversification is going to greatly reduce our investment risk, and a lot of studies have shown that most people actually get better returns this way anyway. So better results with infinitely less work? That sounds perfect for a lazy investor. So every month we're just going to dump all of our savings into an index fund, and then we're going to forget about it. Easy. Occasionally, the companies that we're now part owners of are going to pay us dividends. That's a share of the profits that they made. We're just going to dump those dividends back into more index funds along with the rest of our savings. Depending on what platform you're using to do your investments, you might even be able to automate this whole process. As I mentioned, step 4 is the one that's going to take the longest. But if we just consistently invest 20% or more of our income, then at some point, probably sooner than you might think, you're going to look at the dividends that you got paid that year, and you're going to realize that you got paid more from your investments than you spent on your lifestyle. Congratulations, you now have enough money for later. At this point, you are no longer dependent on the income that you earn every year to stay afloat. You can survive entirely off of your investment portfolio alone. This means you've got a few different options. You could retire if you wanted to, or you could reduce your working hours without having to change your lifestyle at all. You could also decide to keep working if you wanted to, and switch from living on your earned income to your investment income, which will continue to grow as you continue to invest the money that you earn. This means you'll be able to increase your lifestyle beyond what you would have been able to afford just on your regular income, and you'll still be able to retire at any point. And that's it. Of course, you could decide to do a lot more research on a lot of the things that I mentioned in this video, but that's work, and we're lazy. The stuff I just talked about is the basic foundation to pretty much everything in personal finance, and everything else is just about optimizing these core principles. So if you want to keep it simple, this is all you need to remember. Spend less than you make and put aside the difference, hopefully at least 20%. With the money you've got left over, you're going to pay off your credit cards, then save up a 3-month emergency fund, and then pay off the remainder of any high-interest bad debts that you might have, but not your mortgage. Once you've done all that, you're going to invest consistently, and the easiest investments are basic index funds. If you never learn anything else about personal finance, just implementing these things is going to put you in a very good position, certainly far better than most people. Hopefully you found that helpful, and if you want to learn more about your money, you should stick around. Tap that follow button so you can see my other videos as they come out. I'll see you next time.